Hi, everybody. Today is January 6th, 2022. I forgot how to say dates. This is the SIG Architecture Enhancements meeting. We're governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, so be good to each other. This call is recorded and public. There are two items on the agenda today. Let me just double check. There's one from Ray. So why don't we start with Ray?
Yeah, so from the 123 release retro, we talked about how do we move away from the enhancement spreadsheets, which has been kind of a headache for the past several releases here. One suggestion was to look into the KEPS receipt process. And I was going through the Slack messages, how the KEPS receipts process was just paused so that the opt-in process for enhancements would have some time to soak and for folks to get used to and to get feedback from as well. So that's one topic. That's the only topic I want to bring up is like, should we start looking into the KEPS receipt process? I'm not very familiar with the KEPS receipts process. I only attended a few meetings in prior, but that's something that I can dive into as well.
Just as a backstory, the process was basically put on ice because there were a lot of changes last year, and we were also afraid that the current sort of incarnation of the receipts process put a lot of burden on authors and SIGs, like a lot more burden than just entering something into a spreadsheet. So while it makes it potentially easier for the release team, it makes it a lot harder and fussier for authors and everybody else. So that was the reason why we wanted to see like if the opt-in process smoothed some of the edges out for that, and to kind of revisit optimizing something later after we see like what opting in, instead of having, you know, the release team run around, et cetera, which smoothed off some of those edges, which it totally did, but also balancing the burden between, you know, how much does a SIG lead have to do? How much does an author SIG have to do versus how much does a release team have to do? And there was like a lot of concern that the current design was putting a lot of burden on, would put a lot of like burden and confusion on the SIGs. And we kind of didn't want that, especially like since it's a super disruptive change. So that was why it was paused as background.
Thank you for that. I know there's a few people here who have experience on being on release team. I, for one, in my opinion, would like to reduce any additional burden on SIG leads and authors. And I know we always complain about the enhancements tracking sheets, but it's something I'll have to dive into what the receipts process actually looks like and what that workflow looks like for SIG leads. But that's just kind of my opinion that I want to put out there.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a space where it makes sense to have some automation, but like I think want to be careful and mindful to. It's like when you're an engineer just generally, right? Like you do something that makes a lot of sense to you and you're like, yeah, of course, like I'm doing all this stuff and I have to do this like slightly fussy way of doing something, but it's fine for me because like that's what I'm okay with that. But then somebody else, like a user, comes and uses it and they're like, what is this? Or it's really hard to explain, or it's really disruptive. So I think there's definitely room for probably a smoother process of tracking. And I think like we should just give it a little bit of thought to make that as like less burdensome on the SIGs and the authors as possible, because, you know, that's just one task that they have to do in their like infinite tasks during a release. And I don't know, like maybe it would be good for people to like take a look at what the receipts process proposal is and get some feedback. I didn't put it on the agenda, but one thing I was interested in was just getting some feedback on the KEPS template. I know Nabrun and I talked about it last year, and this could be like a good time just to get some feedback on the template itself, and then try to iterate and see where like the pain points are. But it is a balance, you know, like because there is a release team, so I think we have to kind of figure that out. But if you want to also, I don't know, if Ray, like maybe put together some of your ideas about pain points that you've had, or where, like, instead of saying the tracking sheet sucks, because it kind of doesn't suck, right? It's also like a great visual representation for people to be able to look at really quickly. So there are like pros and cons to every approach. So I think that it's like everybody just says, oh, the tracking, sometimes not everybody, but some people say tracking sheet sucks. But that's not like really what sucks about it, right? It's like, what are the problems with how you're currently doing it, and sort of come up, maybe like articulate what problems you've really had with your process. And then I think that could also help people who are interested in an automated or even receipts process take that feedback as well, to come up with like, what are the good points of this thing, and what are the down points? What are the down points of maybe this other idea that exists, or receipts process, and what are the good points of the tracking sheet, and kind of try to put it together into something that, you know, gives a lot of different people something great. Because I think that there are two separate good and bad for both types of process, and you know, neither one sucks. They both have good points. So maybe let's have a conversation about that, but be like specific about it, you know, like,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Just because like I feel like there's really good stuff in both of them, and maybe going too far in one direction is going to be bad. But I think let's be specific, like what sucks about it, like what's wrong about that. We can also maybe like do a poll and ask some of the SIGBs, like what kind of sucks about that process, and then, you know, say like, okay, well, for infra issues, like, you know, what is the KEP receipts process addressing, because that's addressing a bunch of issues too, and try to like really put that together into something where, you know, people are going to feel good. Alana?
Yeah, I would like to see maybe like starting with the actual problem statement and the things that we want to do, and then imagine a process from that, rather than trying to take the existing process and change it. Because I think that, and this sort of dovetails a little bit into the item that I have on the agenda as well, but like the process that we have should be built to serve us. And if it's not working, I think we shouldn't be afraid to throw it out. And so like, it's really hard to do that if we're like working from, okay, we have like an existing system and we want to adapt it. And if like that system's not working, you know, we can look at minuscule improvements, but like maybe there's something that would just work better for everyone. And like, we just need to kind of start from the fundamentals. Like, what are we trying to solve? How are we trying to coordinate people? Is there totally different technology that like maybe will make that a lot easier? I don't know. I haven't spent too much time looking into that, but that was what I would encourage.
I think that's a good point. So how about why don't we make an action item to solicit some feedback on the KEP? And then I don't know if like we can talk about this in Slack, and then also maybe the KEP collection process, like, and spend a little bit of time with that survey. And then we can, I think, Navarun, do you remember somebody said, I think maybe I could ask Josh Burkus because he knows how to run surveys or something. And then we'll work on that, and then we'll send that out and get some feedback, because that could also be a great place. But then I think Ray probably has some feedback as a release team member. Navarun and I also have feedback as release team members, but also as enhancement owners. So I think that might be a great place to start in the new year, especially because, you know, people have used the process now for a couple times. Everybody's taken a breather. And I think this could be a good time to actually solicit some feedback, you know? So yeah, let's put an action item for that. And I'll like make a Google Doc this week and just like get a draft out with some ideas for questions that we can start asking and how we want that to look. And I'll like put that in the Slack or ping you guys and get some thoughts, and we can iterate on that a little bit. Sound good? Okay, I got the thumbs up from Navarun. So. And we have, does anybody else have another point on this item? No? Okay. And I see Alana has one point as well, so I'm going to give her the floor.
Thank you. So I just came out of a SIG instrumentation meeting and received like some amount of feedback on the KEP process and like specific obstacles that people are encountering. And so I wanted to share that with this group. as like, especially somebody who's been relatively involved in enhancement planning for a number of different SIGs over the past year. And just like, I want to look a little bit at like what's working and what's not working. Specifically, I think that there are sort of two main issues right now that are causing a lot of friction for contributors that I'm working with. The first issue is that the KEP template and the KEP process makes it almost impossible for part-time contributors to the project to write features. There are so many questions in the templates and they require so much knowledge about the project that I have received feedback from a number of people like that they have this thing and it might even be a relatively small feature, but the enhancement process in its current state basically makes them not want to contribute to the project at all. And this is both like from new contributors, but also existing contributors who have been working on the project for a long time. And I've just said like the KEP process now requires so much paperwork that they don't even want to contribute anymore, especially because they may have had previously in the past more time to contribute to the project, but they currently don't have that allocated right now. And the idea of having to fill out like 40 questions kind of thing in order to work on a relatively small feature, they say is like making it essentially impossible for them to contribute. So that was one piece of feedback that was raised at my SIG. The other was that the KEP template and process itself is not very well suited for the horizontal SIGs. So SIG instrumentation is a horizontal SIG where we look at lots of different parts of the project as opposed to like a single feature that we build up. And both the PRR process and also much of the KEP template is really focused on like an individual feature and an individual entry component that we want to like take from like, an alpha phase to graduation, possibly with feature flags. And it's very ill suited for something like an instrumentation like lever that people could use as part of like a staging library kind of thing. So an example of this might be preventing metrics cardinality explosion, right? This is a thing that possibly touches many SIGs. And so therefore, like we are required to go through the KEP process because like API machinery might use it, Node might use it. Like we see all sorts of things anywhere where you have metrics that involve, say like HTTP requests, like this might come into play. But the KEP process is so large, like it's fundamentally not a very large feature. It's mostly contained within component base. Like it doesn't really follow the like sort of alpha beta GA sort of graduation anyways. It's kind of being shoehorned into that. And we basically haven't been able to get anybody to work on the feature because of the KEP process, even though like it could probably already be done and graduated already. Because it's not really that user facing. Like there's some amount of user facing, but it doesn't fit that mold. And so what are we doing in order to like encourage development on these features that are critical for the project? Like this sort of thing can help prevent denial of service attacks or like cardinality explosion out of memory, that kind of thing. But like it doesn't fit the kind of standard feature mold of like, yay, I have this cool new thing that I could do on my Kubernetes cluster. So I mostly just wanted to share that. I don't necessarily have any solutions, but I can say that I think the current situation right now isn't really sustainable for our contributor base, given that at least I think according to Contribex, definitely in the past year, we've seen a shrinking of our contributor base. And so anything that makes it harder for part-time contributors or that has a bunch of extra involved work, I think we should be looking at and thinking like, is there some way that we can cut this back? Certainly like for us, certain features like say swap, for example, which is something that I've worked on. KEP process is beautiful. Like, I go through all of the checklists, I go through the templates and like every single thing I need to think of, it's taken care of. I can go and I can write the implementation to spec. I know exactly all the work that I need to do. It's got like my entire development roadmap. It's great. But for other features, it's not a very good fit. And I'm not really sure what to do about that because it's kind of the only thing that we have.
I think that's good feedback. And I think that type of feedback also has given me some ways I think that we can also shape the survey that we want to throw out to get some sort of idea of where is the KEP as it stands working and where is it not working, where might we need a slightly different document, or where, like, because the point of the KEP process is documentation, letting people know, memorializing decisions, et cetera. And there have been discussions in the past that, maybe it's not the best format for everything, like maybe process changes and other types of things. So I think that this is a good reminder to, solicit feedback about this from especially SIG leads and other contributors, of where the sort of limits of the current KEP are in the survey that we send, and kind of get that information together with some data points. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Alana. That was really helpful. And I just want to acknowledge that we have some new people on the call. So Omar, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello.
You don't have to, of course.
So I'm Omar. This is my first SIG meeting, pretty much for the enhancement team. Second SIG meeting ever, by the way. The first one was yesterday. I'm a senior DevOps engineer, right? Working out from California, where I'm actually living in Toronto, though. I've been working with startups and some enterprise company, financial sector, insurance, and stuff like that for the past 3 years. So that's kind of been my work with Kubernetes, but I come from a software engineering background. So kind of been merging that like practices from software engineering to DevOps space. And happy to be here, and I hope I can contribute somehow. And you got a new contributor. Ilana was saying we're declining. No, we're coming.
Welcome. And we have another person, Purnswar.
Yeah, hello everyone. So I'm Purneshwar, and I'm basically from India, and I'm a student right now. I've been involved in this Kubernetes community for quite a few times. Since it's been 6 months now, I guess. And I'm actually here because I am a part of the KEP reading club that has been recently formed, and we are recently we used to pick up some KEPs and study about it, like maybe 2 KEPs, and we get an hour and study about it and discuss what can be done, and throw our points at each other and try to discuss about the KEP. And recently, after this new year, we just came to know that in the release process, we in the KEP reading club, we basically pick out random KEPs to discuss. But we are thinking of picking out some KEPs which need some support from different SIGs, and we're targeting basically the KEPs which are in the release process, and then which are in the current release process maybe. So since the current release process is my first KEP, this is my first enhancement projects meeting. So I guess I can get some advice like how to move forward with picking up KEPs. So this is my first enhancements meeting here.
Oh, so instead of just picking up random KEPs, the KEP reading club, which I think is every Monday morning, or every other Monday morning, is going to look at more active KEPs instead of just pulling one from the archive. And then everyone's going to read it and discuss it in a meeting, right? And so you're wondering, how to pick out that KEP, or how to review a KEP, or?
Yes, exactly. We are a bit we want advice or some pointers on how to pick out KEPs. We were discussing in the last meeting that we might approach the enhancements lead of the current release process or the last release process, and see which KEPs are left out, or which are some of the critical KEPs that are going to be discussed in the next release process. So we can maybe give our pointers and discuss in the KEP reading club. So we're also thinking of increasing, basically the KEP reading club goes bi-weekly, and we're thinking of to make it a monthly meeting so that we can get enough time to discuss around it. So right now we don't have enough folks. We have very, very few folks right now, because the thing is like most people are like beginners when they come to this. Like I see that folks are basically from and around India.
Mhm.
So and there are a lot of like new contributors who are coming into the scene right now, but they don't have enough like backstory on the cap, so they don't really get it, and most of them tend to leave the cap reading club after like 1 or 2 meetings. So we're thinking of like us getting a good process to get us new contributors and also help in making this cap reading club a better thing in the future.
Nabarun, I see your hand is up.
I have answered to Bhuneshwar's first question. So thanks for first thing, like thanks for showing up here. It's great to see you here after the Kept Reading Club. So one idea, so I was following along the notes of this week's Kept Reading Club discussion session. So I think there are two phases of the release cycle where the enhancements team or the release team keeps on like gathering enhancements from the SIGs and then finalizes them. Until they get finalized, I don't think it's very like it's a prudent use of time to go through them because they may get dropped by enhancements freeze. One thing that you can do before the features are finalized is to go to the previous release cycle and see what were the major themes of the release cycle, and that serves like a really good content for you. I'm pretty sure that you might have discussed a few of them already amongst the past few major themes, but uh, those features are the most wanted features that you can get like in the Kubernetes landscape, or the most famous ones or most liked features. But just an idea, so you can act on that.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
like I would also say like maybe think about what your goals are for the club, because like if you have a lot of new people who aren't familiar with KEP, then like what should the goal of the club be, right? Is it going to be to review a bunch of KEPs and help SIGs, or is it going to be to try to help newer people understand some of the new features going into X or Y SIG? Because like if a lot of people are new and they're not that familiar, then you want to set your bar for your club to something that people can actually accomplish. So like Nabarun had really good suggestions to go see the major themes and also see what features didn't graduate, because like if they're alpha or beta, they might be going alpha or beta in the next release. But you might want to just focus on KEPs from one SIG, because like if you just pick them from all of the SIGs, that's a lot of different subject matter. And like you might just want to pick one larger KEP to review and to maybe try to understand. But I would try to think about, what are you trying to understand about this? Like, are you trying to understand the design? Are you trying to understand what makes a good KEP? Or are you trying to like really review something? Because I think that they all require different like levels of understanding. So maybe in the next meeting, try to also figure out what the goals are. If you want to read active KEPs, like what do you hope to accomplish for yourselves? And then maybe think about selecting KEPs from there, if that makes sense.
Yes. Like in the last meeting, we got a pointer to only focus on the alpha and beta features of a cap, which is going on. So that can cut down things pretty much largely, and we can like focus on a bigger subject matter if we focus on a particular SIG only. So that one that you gave about focusing on a particular SIG to pick up our caps is really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think like whatever the people involved are interested in is going to be the thing that people stick around to read.
Yeah.
So maybe just survey everybody and see like what they're working on at work, what they're interested in, or you could always pick a couple like options and then see what people gravitate to, because also the options are endless here almost, and that can be a really difficult conversation. You're like, there's 100 options. Maybe narrow it down to like 3 or 4, like in some way narrow the scope, and then you can also present them that way and then have a discussion like, well, I would be interested in this one because XYZ. but also try to figure out what you're trying to get out of it, like really understanding the technical decisions, understanding the design decision, like just decide for yourselves, I think, and have that goal memorialized so that people don't get too lost or feel too underwater, like.
Yes.
But yeah, that's really cool. Like, thanks for attending.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
just for the folks here. So to give you some extent on what is the scope of the kept reading club, so I was part of the first few reading sessions. So how it started off was, hey, we are a few set of people. Can we start like reading through keps and reading through some of the interested keps that we are interested in? We as in that set of people who would be attending those sessions. And as an added benefit, can we bring authors or reviewers of those keps to start discussing with us what technical challenges and what were the design decisions which went into the finalization of that feature? So that's how it started. But then I think now, based on the last meeting notes, things are like venturing into, okay, how can we also get people involved in those steps as contributors to those features?
Well, it just sounds to me like the first part is cool but I'm wondering, like, if authors come to your kept reading club, I don't know, like that sounds like it could be like a really cool blog or something too. I'm just throwing that out there, like totally suggested.
Yeah,
Like, you spend some time on this kept, you talk to the author, you have a little bit more background than what I might have if I just read the kept. Like, that could be a really cool blog post to like share with people, like maybe you guys all got something out of it, or there's some explanation. Like, I don't know, like, because I see that the kept reading club is like progressing, but like, it's always great to also have something that you have to show for it for yourself. That's why I was talking about like goal setting too, just so that you can say, hey, like, well, we did this blog post, or we focused on this one kept and actually 3 new people reviewed it or something. Like that always feels good when you have something that you can say that you actually did. So I would just think about that, like, however the club is going to progress, like, think about, like, let's say in the next like 4 months, like, what's a goal for you to have? Like, what do you want to say? Like, hey, we did this, and then you can say, hey, we were successful at that. That was cool. Like, let's do this again. Like, but that's just a suggestion because it sounds really cool. So.
Yeah, the thing was basically like in the initial meetings, we were able to get the authors of the caps, but later on we couldn't really get hold of them because due to some work issues or maybe something else, and that like caused us to jump from cap to cap like every 2 weeks, and we really couldn't focus on one. So in the last meeting only, we decided to like someone gave a pointer to make a blog on kates.dev about the Cape Reading Club and its work, so that we can get like more attention, and the decision was taken to make it kind of like to get and involve more contributors in it. So yeah.
Yeah, sounds great. I look forward to hearing what you guys decide. And
Thank you for the pointers.
Yeah, of course. And we don't have any more items on our agenda. And I actually have to go to another meeting. So if Navroom wants to take over, that's cool. Or if we're done, we can be done. So to everybody else.
I have a couple of questions about how to join and stuff, but does this need to go in the recording or who I can check with?
You can also ask in Slack if you want to. I mean, that's totally fine as well. Like,
yeah, okay, sounds good.
And enhancements, or if it's about, I guess, the release process and the release team and all that stuff, that would be in like SIG release. So, but Slack is totally fine as well. So we can direct you and answer your questions there. And that might actually be a good place to ask questions because other people can also see the responses. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm so happy to see everybody. And Happy New Year, actually. Happy New Year. I'm going to stop recording though.